Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to our NoCodeOps live community show. I hope you're doing well wherever in the world you're joining us from. And if you've been here before, you know how much I love interacting with our audience. So please do let me know who's watching us right now. I can see Eric is here. So good morning, Eric, and all our members, or all our community members, I'm expecting to see and have a bit of fun with today. And if this is your first time here, we're NoCodeOps, an international community for operations professionals that leverage the power of no code and automation at work. We have a free Discord that you can join from our from our website. And every other week, we get together to offer you these fantastic live streams, inviting expert speakers from the automation space. So last week, we actually hosted our first event, hosting a RevOps guest speaker. And so we've been focusing a lot on operations in 2024. And this year we're kicking off the new 2025 talking about this new fantastic role, which seems to be the fastest growing career in the US right now. And so I really wanted for my community to get a sense of what it was all about. We've been talking about how to identify bottlenecks and what the role in particular is. And so today I'm really excited to keep on working on that trend. And actually, I wanted to show you something a little bit more practical, something a little bit more hands on. And that is why I invited our expert RevOps and MOps, David Sandel. So I'm just going to pull him in. Hello, David. How are you today?
Good. How are you? How is everybody else doing?
Oh, good. I can see we have all our community friends in the chat. We have Russell, Felipe, Faris, Donovan, Patricia. So great to see all the friends. I was telling you. So guys, you know that I've been doing live streams for many years, but I was telling David, look, there's no solution here. We're all gonna feel nervous. You know, you can make as many as you want, but we're always gonna feel a little bit nervous. But actually, when you see all the friends in the chat, that's when I take a deep breath and actually relax. So, David, you see, we're in good hands.
Okay, well, I'm new to the community and in a way new to RevOps, but we'll get to that in a second. So, I like that we're all friends here and in a safe space. So,
Yes, it's a safe space indeed. And I love that you're saying you're fairly new to RevOps because I've had lots of chats with people in the community, and some of them have been telling me, look, Claudia, I've been doing RevOps for the past 10 years, and it's just finally now people are giving it a name.
sorry about that. That was my
That's,
dog shaking.
that's all right. That could have been a good dad joke. Who's that? The dog. Not a joke, but awesome. And so, yeah, I was saying some people have been used to RevOps, and some other people are finding this new role as a new career. So, I would like to hear from you. How did you get into revenue operations? What was your journey like? And more specifically, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so my medium story, medium length story of how I got here is so I went to school for electrical engineering, and I was actually an electrical engineer for 8 years working in industry in aerospace. So working on commercial and military aircraft and even on some NASA projects. And just the cubicle life was not for me. Sorry for anybody that is in a cubicle right now. But it wasn't for me. And so I actually quit my job and moved into a van on purpose. And I was a sponsored action sport athlete, so rock climbing and snowboarding. And to support that, I started writing blog posts for other online publications. And that turned into me also becoming like social media manager for people, which then led to email marketing and copywriting. And before I knew, and I was running my own blog at the time, so I had web developing in my back pocket. Plus, I knew like a whole bunch of different code languages from engineering. So like it all kind of came together all of a sudden. Somebody's like, well, I'd like you to do my social media, run my ads and my email marketing for me. So I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that for $15 an hour. What did I know at the time? And so then I was doing their landing pages, and I just kind of like took over the whole funnel. And that was really exciting for me because I was in control. And
You had
then
the power.
exactly. And then I would have other clients where maybe I didn't get to do all of it, but I did one part or a couple of pieces of that. And I noticed, I was like, well, my results are struggling because of other people. And so I just started to come to this realization that I do want to have my hands in everything and control the customer experience, where all the data is going, how the information is handled, and all of that. So I actually started doing that about 5 to 7 years ago,
Hmm.
but it literally was not until December of 2024 that I learned the word RevOps. So
Exactly. And
I
that's
had
that's the
been,
same conversation that I had earlier with this other professional who was like, I feel like I've been doing it for 10 years, but finally somebody gave it a name.
yeah. And, I had gone through a bunch of different iterations of, I'm a marketing automation. No, I'm a MarTech consultant. No, I'm this. No, I'm that. And finally, I saw the light. I was like, RevOps. Yes, you have put me in a box that I want to be in.
Awesome, awesome. And so I know that so last week you watched the stream with Nick. We talked about the role, what it entitles, and the sort of impact that it can have on a company, right? When you start tracking revenue operations and when you start streamlining them, most importantly. And so today we wanted to showcase something a little bit more hands-on, right? I know that you've come prepared with 3 use cases that our audience here can learn from and actually rebuild for their own companies, clients, however you'd like to use them. But that's why this is the new format that we're trying here at NoCodeOps. We want for you to get the information, but we also want for you to get the value and knowledge on how to apply, these use cases. So all yours, David.
All right. So, a little bit of background on this company that all of these apps and workflows and everything's come from them. They are a successful 7-figure online coaching business. So, we do high ticket sales. And when it started out, it was just the founder, who is a coach, and his like right hand man, right? It just happened to be a man. And then they expanded. He took on a partner, so now there was 2 coaches, and they had grown that successfully to like mid to upper, well, no, low to mid 6 figures, so hundreds of thousands per year. And then they're like, well, we've got something here. We need to make this even bigger. So they enrolled into a high ticket coaching program to learn how they could scale their business. And they had a lot of disjointed systems. They were on WordPress. They were on this, that, the other thing. They had stuff all over the place. They had spreadsheets. It was just a mess. Um, so they're like, well, we need to scale. We need to hire people. So, they started hiring appointment setters and closers, and they had nothing in place to really handle all of this. So that's what Nick was talking about last week when he was talking about bottlenecks. And
Hmm.
so there was no systems, there was no processes. We were just getting people into the business and then, forcing them into their daily roles, which, they had kind of no direction, right? So one of the first things that we had to do was come up with some systems. And we all know that bottlenecks can come from technology, the systems that are in place, and worst of all, the humans. Um, I try to eliminate as much as possible any human interaction, so that way the salespeople only do sales, the admin people only do admin, the coaches only coach. The founder and the original partner are still part of the team. They still like to peek their heads into the sales teams every now and then. It's like, no, stay out of there, please. So we've got some things set up just for everybody. And then also Nick talked about these mind shifts going from, the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation are the systems. Then we're going to build the tech on top of those systems. And then lastly, train the humans how to use that tech. And also ways of anticipating the bottlenecks and failures before you start designing. Or at
Mhm.
least in my case, what I'm going to show you today is some of this stuff was built before I got there. A lot of it was built by me, but 2 or 3 years ago. And as you know, technology never stops. And now we've just got AI coming out our ears. We've got AI agents. So I'm actually going to be replacing a lot of what we're seeing today with much simpler but more easily scaled systems using AI.
Oh, I love that. Simplicity over complexity is also the new 2025
Yes.
trend. Yep.
So I wanted to touch because we talked a little bit, Claudia and I, about, well, maybe we should talk about performance and best practices and things like that. So when we're talking about Zapier, there's not much that we can optimize because executing a task is not really up to us. We don't have control over it. But I do have another client that is not this one that I was just talking about forever. Um, they are an education software company, and they were also implementing AI. So that way their customers could say, hey, build me a quiz, build me a crossword puzzle, build me a word search, whatever, with this topic, with these clues, these are the answers, blah, blah, blah. AI would build it using their software and then spit it out. So this has, I don't know, close to, or it does have 37 tasks, I think. At first,
Mm.
it was all in a single serial line, which we're kind of used to using Zapier, and it took 3 minutes to execute because of all of the calls to the AI API. So I said, well, hey, guess what? You can use paths, especially because everything that's here in these separate paths are not dependent on each other. So they could actually execute in parallel. So what used to be a 3-minute zap is now 1 minute.
That's wild, and I love that you're using paths as well, which is fairly, it's not super new, but sometimes people don't realize that that's an option as well. And actually, I forgot to mention, we love interacting with you in the audience. There are so many people watching us right now, so if you do have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'll make sure I'll address them, and I'll stop our speaker whenever possible. So if you haven't used paths, here's a great example, for example.
Yes, and do please ask questions because this is going to be hands-on. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to build and go through a very simple Zap, but then towards the end, it gets way too complex to build anything. So if we can't be hands-on building together, then I would love to interact and just answer questions as we go. All right. So that was just my one little sidebar on technology and how to optimize Zapier. If you really want to speed up a Zap, if you can, I would highly suggest building in paths, as especially I did this before paths was updated. Now paths has a condition where it can just always run. There, you don't have to put in a filter condition or a path condition. You just say, hey, no, run this path every single time. So now you can really do a lot of parallel processing. Okay, so here is the first Zap that we're going to go over and we're going to play around with inside of Zapier. As I mentioned, they hired appointment setters and some salespeople. And before it was, hey, David, we need you to manually set up all of their accounts. And there was some stuff that went on before mine, which was, they submit their applications, they go through the process, we hire them, onboarding is me, then there's training, then there's a little bit more onboarding after the training, and then we release them into the wild. So this Zap basically focuses on onboarding, which is they say, hey, David, here's our new hire with their information. And I say, thank you. And I put it in a spreadsheet, which triggers my Zap. Here you say split into paths, but there's still only one paths. But that's because you have to think a little bit into the future. And so I said, well, we're not only going to be hiring salespeople. We also had, like I said, admin roles, tech roles, leadership, coaches, stuff like that. So,
And that goes back to preventing those bottlenecks that you were saying just earlier.
yeah, correct. And tool selection. So the funny thing about no code apps is that the more code you know, the better your no code apps actually get. So thinking of performance, doing cost analysis, we also know that, Zap tasks cost money, right? So if we are going to be building something with in the Google Works, what's it called? Google Business Suite.
Yeah, workspace or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So they've got Google Apps script, and I assume we're all somewhat familiar with code, and I assume we're all somewhat familiar with ChatGPT. So guess what? You can write a lot of really powerful code using ChatGPT. So here, for right now, I am still manually putting in the role, the name, their personal email address, and phone. But I didn't want to waste any tasks from Zapier to generate their work email. And so part of this script here is to automatically generate their work email based on their name.
Okay. A question, just like out of hot to press. I don't know, just like out of instinct now. Why are you manually inputting that data?
Oh, well, that's coming later.
Okay.
Because this was just off the top of my head one day as I got the message, right, and it had, after I had done this like 6 times, all of a sudden it's like, why am I doing this? Like,
Okay.
I should just build a Zap, and it was just really fast for me to quick build this spreadsheet and then go on my way.
Makes sense.
But we'll see here in a little bit. And then, so in this code, yeah, it automatically generates a email, but it also looks to see if that email address has already been used. And if it does, then it modifies it. So that way there's no redundant emails. I will come back to the slide. No, I won't. I'll tell you right now. I'll go back to here. So here, the Zap gets triggered when the new team member is added. I delayed for a minute just to kind of let technology and API stuff get tossed back and forth a little bit. Then here, like I said, I split into paths because in the future, we may have some of these other roles to account for.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're talking only about the salespeople. I can't remember what I'm doing here, but it's needed. And then here, so luckily, again, even though Google Workspace, I could have done in the Google App script. I just looked at that code and it was way too complex versus how fast I could do it here in Zapier, which is easily to create a user using their personal email address and personal phone numbers to send them their notifications, to set their recovery information, that type of thing. And through testing, they were not receiving and automatically saying like, hey, your new account has been created. So we're just sending that email manually through Gmail. And then we enroll them into their sales training that we have set up on Teachable.
I'm taking notes of all these manual tasks that you're doing.
So one thing I didn't say in there is one step is that we also add them to a shared cloud folder. And again, could have done that in Zapier, would have been very fast, but it also only took me one prompt on ChatGPT to add a function at the bottom of this code, which is pretty hard for all of you to see. But basically, it is adding that person to our cloud and giving them permission to have access to our files there. Okay, so some improvements. The paths for the different roles. Sending a message to the next person that says, hey, I'm done. They're onboarded. You can do your stuff now. And could it be all triggered by a Slack message? Yes, it can. I think, Claudia, we will have to change windows that I'm sharing.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right by me. And I can see in the chat, people are getting very excited about the use case. Mon says that's very helpful in many entrepreneurs and business owners for them. Worked in media and publishing company, and this could be really helpful indeed. So, and I saw a comment from Donovan as well, talking about sometimes I opt for dedicated zaps instead of complex zaps with a ton of paths. I'll kick off other zaps with a webhook. It helps keep my zaps simple, but then again, it can lead to multiple zaps. Oh, I've never said zaps so many times in one sentence.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're going to cover some of those use cases real quick. So here we are. This is the improved one, which a lot of it is placeholders because I did it about 30 minutes before this talk, but I am very 99.99% certain that it would work. So the trigger would be a Slack message because that's currently how I receive it anyways. And the people that send it to me have it formatted: name, so-and-so, email, blah, 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 phone number, yada, yada. And so we can receive that Slack message here in Zapier. We could either use a code step or formatter steps, plural, or an AI step to parse that data out, basically, so that way we have their name, their email, their phone number. We can take those outputs and we can put it into the Google spreadsheets by creating a new row, then mapping the output from the code into the cells of the spreadsheet, just exactly as we have it right now. The trigger of the Google app script is once the email or once the name of that person is entered, so that would still trigger and generate the work email address, and which we would then also have to use here in our paths. So here in our path conditions, what I showed you on the slide, I don't know if you can see it, it's probably still really small, was that if, well, now it's not going to work because I didn't run a test. But
We can always run it, can't we?
well, but I don't have a message in here loaded and ready to go with the correct information.
Okay.
But the condition would be, so you would choose your code step, and in the output of your code step, you would want to have that role be assigned there. And so you would choose that only continue if role equals or exactly matches sales. And so depending on what you need to do, you go down this sales path. So again, the app script is going to add them to our Google Cloud. Then we give them their work email, notify them of that, and enroll them in their training. Your admin people may need different stuff or have different training. Leadership for sure doesn't need sales training. And path D, which we have conditions for always run, I put a delay on here because for 5 minutes, which again is more than long enough, because all you want to make sure is that these paths have executed before you send your message. And this could be a channel message or a private message just saying, hey, I've done my stuff. This person's accounts are all added. They're where they need to be. And, take it from here.
And so that last step applies to all the different users.
Yeah, right. Because the process that we're looking at is onboarding. So I'm setting up their accounts and their permissions and giving them access to all the tools that they need, but yet there's still someone in charge of pairing them up with who their training buddy is going to be, what conversations and what other type of meetings do they need to be scheduled. That's not my thing.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And just for context, if you're just tuning in, we're showcasing a use case for onboarding new team members, and so how to address different teams and how to kind of section these people and give them the right category and the right automation that will onboard them properly.
Yeah. And so that, I believe, is all I have for this one.
And that's something that you currently use, right? That you've implemented, and you were given the task to onboard all these new members, and you thought, okay, let me do it in a way that it's scalable and that can apply to multiple teams.
Yeah, and actually, not to toot my own horn here, I wasn't given the task. I just saw that there was an opportunity. So it's like,
Yeah.
well, so like, let's make my life easier. Not only am I making my client's life easier, but myself as well.
Which is the right, mindset shift that we were talking about last week.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going back to the slides now.
Mm-hmm. Here we are.
So these were the improvements. All right. And as you see, this is what we just built. All right, before I move on, and I'm talking really fast and going really fast because example 1 was easy. We took quite a while. Example 2 is medium, and example 3 is just ridiculous. So if we don't get to example 3 or we don't have enough time to get through it, that's probably okay. But if we have any questions so far, at least about this,
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay. All right. So then, second example. This was, again, the task originated as, hey, we don't want to manually manage all of our Zoom cloud recordings because we have a quota of how much we can have in there. Plus, they also disappear after a while. We don't want to do that manually. And what they were doing at the time was Zoom recording would be processed. It would go to the cloud. A person would go in, download it. And then if they didn't have that folder automatically synced to Google Drive, well, then they would have to open Google Drive and upload it there, as well as copy the link and paste it into the HubSpot contact record if it was a customer meeting, or just put it in the correct folder. So original was humans every step of the way, which gives a lot of room for errors, which there was plenty. Currently, I have it automated. And future, this is why I said I will be going through and be using AI agents, because as Donovan said, lots of paths, lots of complexity. And the amazing thing about AI agents is, I'm going to give it this raw webhook data, which has everything that it needs to parse out and do what I'm going to show you with paths. And the AI agent can just figure out all of this on its own and put it where it needs to go.
Right.
So as it is right now, we have one trigger, which is a new cloud recording in Zoom. And we post it with a webhook to these 3 different zaps. So there's one for the coaches, one for the founder, and one for our salespeople. And this, even though this trigger doesn't know which type of meeting or where it's supposed to go, that's why it sends it to all 3 of them at the same time. And then, I have more stuff. And then you'll see there's a filter that says, okay, well, if it catches it here for the salespeople, but it's actually a coaching meeting, well, then it'll just filter out and it doesn't run. So potential bottlenecks is that if you were to build each individual one, instead of having a new cloud recording, you can actually have a different trigger, which is new recording for, and then you would have to set it up for each individual license. So if you have, if something changes in your process and you've got 6 people in your sales team, you're going to have to go in and update 6 different zaps as opposed to just one. And then thinking ahead into the future, what happens as licenses or people come and go? And also, could we expand this current system for multiple video sources instead of just Zoom? Oh, okay. Guess I'm going to switch back over to Zaps. I apologize for all the switching, but I've got different...
That's okay. It keeps us entertained, and I'm always keeping an eye on the chat as well, still talking about paths.
I've got different
Oh, wow. Look at these 3.
Yeah. So this is the one for coaches, and to Donovan's point, it is huge and messy. But I guess I don't really have a good excuse. I don't see in this situation. I'm just trying to think if it could be improved, Donovan, by all means, let me know your thoughts, how you would do it, or anybody else. But it's a lot of redundant tasks. And like I said about thinking into the future, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 people just on the coaching team. So if I were to have built 4 separate Zaps and something down here changes, that means I would have to go into 4 different Zaps and update it, versus here, I only have to do it in one place. And that's kind of how I ended up here. So as I said, once the new cloud recording is detected or triggered, it sends the webhook here. And this is how I mentioned that if it's a sales recording and we're here in the coaching Zap, well, it's just going to get filtered out right here. Then we have to do some code stuff to basically prepare that JSON data to get it into a usable form and get the information that we need. Plus, we're talking about working with actual files here. So there's some stuff you need to do in order to actually download a file from a cloud and save it into Google Drive. And one of those things is getting the correct file extension. You have to unzip it or extract it, and then download it into Google Drive. Let's see what else is worth mentioning. Well, this loop, because in Google Cloud, it saves multiple files, and this client specifically wanted every file. They wanted the transcripts, they wanted the speaker view, the gallery view, and I think there's a possible 4th or 5th. So we needed to do, for every file that's generated in the recording, we needed to upload that to Google Drive, which is why there's a looping step, which made this really fun to figure out.
So you're extracting all of that into separate files, the video, the transcript, the individual speakers, the audio, presumably as well. I'm
Yeah,
thinking this would be for like a video editing purpose. Otherwise, I don't see why they'd have to have all those sources.
correct.
I see Donovan in the chat says, I would break that into separate zaps and pass along info like variables that are common to each path. Maybe you guys can do a little bit of brainstorming in the community, possibly. And Charles also says a true RevOps expert has at least 14 tabs open at any given time. I
Well,
can promise you, Charles, before we got on the stream, David had to go and close all of his tabs.
yes. For this one client, I usually have no less than 20 open at all times. And I'm not saying that that's makes me an expert or not. Maybe the opposite, but that's just the way I roll.
Mm-hmm. And to reiterate on the importance of loops, Donovan adds, once loops were added to Zapier, that made some of my zaps come alive. So, yeah, very, very helpful indeed.
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm going to really go through too much of this, because a lot of the hard work is knowing the data that comes in through the webhook. And let's see, I mean, it looks like this, right? The recording files, JSON payload looks like this. So there's a lot of parsing, a lot of extracting and working with that I don't think we have time to go through.
Maybe you can tell us more about the sort of impact that this use case has had.
Well, as I mentioned, when somebody, so it was up to the individual person that was having the recording. First of all, they would sometimes record it on their computer and sometimes in the cloud. And so I just said, well, no, we have to update those settings so that it's automatically and always recorded to the cloud. So then they would go into there, they would download the zip file, they would have to extract all the files, upload it to Google Drive, then, like I said, manually get the share link from there. And if it was a customer meeting, find that customer in HubSpot, paste the link in there as a note. If it was a coaching recording, put it into a different folder inside of Google Drive, and then send a message to Slack to tell all the other coaches, like, hey, this meeting or this presentation is available. And so, I mean, for one person to do it, it was probably no less than 15 minutes for each for each recording, and they were doing that multiple times per day, every single day.
Yeah, so you can, and also all those manual steps, obviously, as you were saying, leave room to potential errors in the way. And how
Yeah,
do you track those errors? Maybe you don't realize that something, is not been added somewhere, and then that's where you end up in a bottleneck as
yeah,
well. And that's where you were saying as well, identifying automation possibilities there.
right. And now everything is like the names are standardized because it's all just done through the Zap. The name
Hmm.
is whatever, whatever with a variable, and then
Did you specify a naming convention for it, or?
well, I told them the naming convention that I came up with, but the naming convention is built into this Zap, so there's no way that they can change it unless they decide for whatever reason they want to go in and screw things up.
Okay.
um, So let's just take a look. So again, here we're using in these path conditions from the JSON payload to know what type of coaching meeting it was. Then here's where we grab, again, through the code and the parsing, we have the download link from the steps up above, which we use to upload the file using Google Drive. Here I'm using subzaps. So I think in Donovan's first comment talked about using, like I did here, using webhooks to call other zaps and whatnot. That's also a similar use as a subzap by Zapier, because I used this adding drives to HubSpot in multiple places, and very inception, that subzap happens to have another subzap for looking up the contacts by their name to get their HubSpot IDs. So that way we know where to upload or create that note in HubSpot. This filter step is just saying like, okay, if it's the last step of the loop, then we're actually going to kick ourselves out of that loop, notify the Slack channel like, hey, this meeting is available for us to watch. And then the last one is going back in through Zoom using the API to delete that recording. So that way, again, we don't have to manually manage the storage on Zoom. We're just deleting them as we go because, we have multiple terabytes of storage on Google Cloud.
And I could see this use case being particularly useful for a media and technology company, anyone processing media, video. And you were saying these would have taken at least 15 minutes of somebody's time, multiple times per day. So, were you able to quantify, like at the end of the month, roughly how much time overall this has saved your clients?
No, they've they've got me on my toes. Like a lot of these future improvements I've already had ideas for long time ago, but it's just like every day is a new fire. So no, I have not. But
Hmm.
as part of being, so I didn't say this at the beginning, is these people are just a client. So I'm a freelancer or consultant or however you want to label that. But this is just one of my clients, and I don't have all the time in the world to work for them, although that would be great. So
Maybe there's room, for another automation there that can generate a report for you to give
yeah,
to your
exactly.
clients.
So part of my own marketing and outreach and stuff like that is that I do need to go back and quantify some of these things, both in
Hmm.
terms of time saved and revenue generated, because this company, like I said, they went from low to mid six figures when I was started with them. And now onboarding a new employee, yes, that saves time, doesn't really add much to the bottom line necessarily, but stuff like this is saving people time so that they can focus more on actually being productive on other things.
Hmm.
The third one that we're going to go over is the lead routing. So this one and the lead routing has allowed them to scale that we're now up to like 1.2, 1.3 million in sales per year. So
That's fantastic.
yeah, so they've almost doubled in 2 or 3 years, which I mean it's a great result. I'm not gonna I'm not
It
gonna
is
lie.
it is mind-blowing, and you should
But
definitely
when
document that. You should definitely, put that in your marketing strategy.
Yeah, but then you hear some marketing bros out there on LinkedIn and Facebook groups, and they're like, "Oh, well, I went from 0 to a million in 6 months." So it's like, well, okay, well then maybe my 2 or 3 years is not that impressive. I don't know.
Don't yeah, don't, don't pay too much attention to the bros.
Yeah,
This is much more valuable to me, and I feel like to our audience as well, like learning actually what you've built and where, the impact that it's had on, on the client or the company that you work for.
yeah. See, Donovan asked if I use Puzzle or something to document all of this. Again,
Yes.
don't have enough time, so no. um, but I do use on the in the odd occasion that I do get a chance, or if I have a smaller client where things are not this involved, then yes, I'll just use Miro or any basic web flowchart builder. Using Zapier, what are they called nowadays? Canvas
Hmm.
would be, would be great, but just haven't gotten into that yet. And again, there's always like the best case scenario, which would be something like Canvas, and then there's always like, well, fast and easy, right? So you just kind of got to pick your battles. So Miro and flowcharts are much easier and faster for me than using
Yeah, and
Canvas.
it's all different use cases as well. It depends what the client is using, what the company is using, and it's all down to the use case at the end of the day.
Yeah. So if it's a simpler process, for sure I'll document it, especially if someone hires me to do just like a thing so that they have a block diagram of how the data flows. But what I'm about to show you in example number 3 is it needs multiple layers of documentation, and I'm ashamed that it's not there yet, but I just have it in my head, and I call it job security. But and luckily they're not asking for it to be documented, but it really needs to be. So I'm going to switch back over again to the slides.
Yes. Let me see. I was following the conversation about puzzle. Yeah, we can also chat about that in the community. I think from what I remember, it's quite a decent documenting tool. But anyway, yeah, new
Yeah.
lead routing.
All right. So this one, I got a lot of text. I could also go into deep in the woods about all these different things, but we've only got like 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to go fast and probably skip some stuff. So this is one is hard. New lead routing, depending on your system, is not so hard. But again, we have appointment setters and closers. Like they're going to close the lead. We've got hot leads, we've got cold leads, we've got multiple platforms that we integrate with. HubSpot is mostly the hub, so all these other platforms will integrate with HubSpot, but sometimes it will also just go directly to each other. So like trying to go over all those intricate details right now would be a little bit too much. So this is kind of just how I thought of our lead routing. Basically everything depends, especially because we are doing high ticket sales. We are doing a lot of manual outreach, a manual follow-up, a lot of stuff. So there's humans in the loop everywhere, and everything depends. Also, there's humans filling out the forms, the customers themselves. They are affecting the system as well. So when can things happen, and when are notifications needed? Can you combine lead scoring and with the routing, and how does that affect it? Do you keep the leads balanced between salespeople, and do you balance the hot leads versus the cold leads? What happens when a cold lead becomes a hot lead? Can your
Hmm.
system adjust or sync to all of that? What happens if all of a sudden you get a crap ton of more leads? Can your system handle it? How are you following up? And how can you remove the humans as much as possible? So my process for, if it's really easy, okay, I can kind of skip through it because I've been doing it a long time. But if it's a big thing
That's
like
okay.
this, no,
Yeah.
I'm saying my process for really simple stuff is I'd skip like it's just automatic.
Okay, that would be your normal,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
normal thing to do. Yep.
for for something this big with so many platforms and so many variables along the way, first I build the system for best case scenario. That means we have the most perfect lead that does everything they're supposed to do, that we want them to do, but they never do. our salespeople will use the tools and the dashboards given to them. They will never go rogue or go off script, but they always do. And then once you have that system built out, whether in the actual tools or an initial flow chart or even a detailed flow chart, it's like, well, where can these points of failure happen? So starting, oh, my dog might bark. Starting with what happens when the lead does something or doesn't do something. Do they fill out the form incorrect or not correct? Do they fill it out twice? Because they do that. What if my salesperson forgets to click a button or forgets to designate what type of call it was? How frequently are these failures going to show up, and how likely are they to happen, and how severe are they? So point D, risk management tools. This is going back to my engineering days, is there are risk management tools out there. They have a scoring system set up that basically says, well, this is the failure case. How likely is it to happen? If it does happen, how bad or how much will that affect it? And how many times does that show up throughout your system? That will give you a score, and that will tell you your higher risk versus lower risk failures. That's just an aside because I didn't have time to go out and find those things for you. Then, as I've got the best case system planned out and already built, then I start to slowly introduce these easiest point of failures into my system and design around those. So some of those things can be dealt with by settings based on your tool, and others that you can't force the human to do something, and the tool also can't force them to do something. So then you kind of have to either send them notifications or build them tasks or do something in a project management tool. But again, you can never force them to do those things. It's just like your best hopes and dreams. So for us, our hot and cold leads come from the information source. It also comes from the information contained in the form, or because our whole environment is built with HubSpot CMS, we can see the actions that they've taken before coming a lead. And so even if they come in through like a cold free download, we can still fast track them into hot if we need to. So the cold system is they download a freebie on the website. They go to, we have a HubSpot workflow that goes to our different salespeople, which is automatically balanced. So that's nice through HubSpot. Then based on the information during the download form, they're put onto different list views. Our salespeople work off those list views, and they use an auto dialer. And then if a call is not connected, the lead status automatically gets updated. Notifications are sent to reach out via WhatsApp. After 7 calls, which is what we just came up with, they're updated to try again later in German.
Mm-hmm.
They go into our long-term lead follow-up, and then if they fall out of our long-term lead follow-up, then we just get rid of them. If a call is connected, then the salesperson...
That was a good anticipation. If the call is connected, drum rolls, the lead is qualified on the spot.
Yep. So at that point, we're already told to kick rocks and get out of there because we're annoying, or they agree to the free coaching session and they become a hot lead. So basically, the cold lead system is either going to kick people out of our system or they're going to transition them into the hot lead or the next stage in the sales. So here's an example of what that looks like for us. They fill out this form. Mm-hmm. And if you think doing RevOps and automation in your own language is difficult, you should do it in a different language that you don't speak, because I don't speak German. So they fill this out, they get their freebie, it enrolls them in this workflow where HubSpot balances out and assigns them the owner. And then with all these little arrows, those are our different list views. You see in one of the giant blocks of red is the phone number. And so then our auto dialer air call can just go down the list and start calling contacts until somebody picks up. Okay, so some of the challenges that we run into is that the salespeople, they're supposed to use air call, but they don't always do that. Sometimes they'll call from their HubSpot interface. And so here's a HubSpot workflow that says, okay, well, if you do, we're going, like, I can handle it. we're going to update the lead status based on the call outcome. And we have a property that with these values that are for lead status, which is follow-up 1 through 7. And then, basically it's updating that. I'm trying to think. There was these other call outcomes, which are in German right now, and I can't remember exactly what they are, but the most part is counting the HubSpot calls. But then we also noticed sometimes they would use HubSpot, and if the same contact, they would also use AirCall. So now you have to deal with the case where the salesperson is calling from 2 different platforms, but yet the contact record needs to be current regardless of which platform. So enter Zapier, because AirCall has a Zapier trigger. So again, a call is made through AirCall. We filter it for only the ones that were missed. We look up that contact, and then we update their lead status here using Zapier, which also, again, that gets fed back into HubSpot. So that value in HubSpot is always up to date. Now, the hot lead system, again, at any point in time when a cold lead is contacted, regardless if they're follow-up 1 or 6, if they do agree to a coaching call, they get pushed into this hot lead, or what is actually just called our usual sales system. Because as soon as anybody books a free coaching session, the system will create a deal for that person. And then instead of managing that lead through contact records and properties, we manage it through deal stages and deal cards. So basically, we're using Calendly. That's another story. Don't say, hey, why don't you use HubSpot calendars? That's a different story.
Yeah, we're not getting in the weeds of platforms.
Yeah, so we're using Calendly, triggers a Zap. Here, it assigns the owner, which can also check to see if there was a previous owner from the cold lead system and adjust based on that. And then it basically creates that free coaching session in our appointment setters calendar. That's what all of this is doing down here.
So walk me through this last step again. So the first Zapier implementation that we saw was from a cold lead that becomes a hot lead, and you kind of like update that process using Zapier. This one here is specifically to get them to book a call.
This one is if they've already booked a call.
Okay.
So, because on the website and where we run we run some ads just to the free download, and then we also run ads directly to the book a free call. So if somebody books a free call, they're already a hot lead, or they're already somebody that we need to reach out to and talk to them. So when they book that free call on Calendly, this part here is basically just assigning the owner, so who's going to take that lead, and then who is going to reach out to them. And then we use that information from Calendly to put it on the calendar of that appointment setter.
And how does the matching happen? So how do you know who's going to be assigned to that particular call? Is that an extra step, or is that something that you're doing manually or based on availability?
So that's captured in Calendly. So Calendly has a round robin setting. So it's really hard to see, but at the very top, this Calendly booking created data coming in from that already tells us who it was scheduled with in Calendly.
Okay.
And that's what the paths are. So whichever salesperson that is, it will go down the correct path for that. And then it has to find the contact or create the contact in HubSpot, and then create the deal and the meeting and all of that.
Yeah, I see. Wow, that's quite another extensive use case as well, with all the different paths. And I know that you mentioned simplifying complexity in the future. How do you envision that?
Yeah, I won't go over it, but this was just the first part, because then once the meeting gets created in HubSpot, then let's see. Did I capture it here? No. It triggers the workflow in HubSpot that then creates the deal. But then, so here are some failure points. I can probably we can deliver these slides or put it in the Discord channel. People can go through this to see what I didn't get to cover. So for this one, how would I make it easier? This is such a big beast, because so what you're not seeing is that, oh, sorry, where am I going here? This is one Zap. It's already big. This is another Zap to handle if all of a sudden the person decide, because it's a relationship coach, so the person can sign up just as an individual or with their partner if they're already in a couple.
Mm-hmm.
So that can change. Somebody can first sign up just as an individual and then change their mind that they want to bring their partner. So that has to change the deal. It has to change the initial consultation meeting. Instead of a phone call, it's now a Zoom meeting, which that all gets taken care of through Zapier as well. So this thing on the left, that's another Zap. The thing on the right is another Zap. Not pictured is another Zap that distinguishes a partner versus the original person, because we only want to talk to the original person, not the partner, because the partner may not be as interested. And then this was just to show you, so we can make call outcomes required. So when they have the call, we say like, no, you have to classify it, what happened during that call. But with meetings, we cannot. We just have to send an embarrassing Slack message here, like, hey, you forgot to classify your meeting, and it's broadcasted to the owner and the CEO and everything like that. So it's like, ooh, to avoid that Slack message, you better classify your meeting. And then with HubSpot deal automations, you can force people to set properties. And then again, this was just my process revisited, but I added number 4, which is revisit, refine, and AI. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would be wondering, and I would love any of your suggestions. Like, how would I improve that one? I don't know. And I know you don't all have the big picture, but for sure is that it should be simplified. I'm just not sure if I don't know if the process needs to be simplified or my handling of it needs to be simplified.
Or maybe both
Or
could
both, yeah.
be could be improved. I know there has been a lot of talk around the AI agents, and I know that as a community, we're also starting to host a few co-building sessions within our Discord about specifically about building solutions with AI agents and automation. So that could be interesting. But I love how extensively you use the platform and all these use cases, and you're really taking on board the work and time of so many professionals. I'm sure that your clients can see that. Yeah. It is huge, and I would be personally curious to see and follow you on this journey on how do we simplify complexity in this new year. But it's absolutely fantastic and inspiring to see how you've come up with all these processes and solutions being uh, a team of one, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
And go ahead.
yeah, and I was just saying, Donovan says, impressive work, David. Thank you for sharing your process and workflows with us. I've also shared your LinkedIn, so whoever is here watching us, I've shared the LinkedIn so you can connect with David. You can also obviously find him in our Discord. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. What were you saying, David?
I just want to say, like, again, the complexity of it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the best workflow
Mm-hmm.
out there. But given how many human touch points we have, both with the customer and with our human sales agents, it evolved to this way. And regardless of how complex it actually is, it is scalable. Like, we started, again, going back to the mid 6-figure days, we were taking on 1 to 2 new leads per day. Now we're taking on hundreds of new leads per day. And this system just keeps chugging along. So we could scale even further. And although it's big and messy, it's been working this whole time.
Yeah, amazing. And I wouldn't call it messy.
Oh, it's
It's
messy.
No, but it's well thought out, and I love the fact that it can scale. And do you document? Oh, you said you don't have enough time for that, but I think if I could push you to do a little bit of homework, start documenting all those builds, because
Yeah.
I can see how relevant and how important they can be for
Yeah.
maybe more clients for you.
Sure. And then, I'm just showing you the fastest thing I could show you in the 20 minutes I gave myself, but not shown is like all the custom codes for data validation and stuff on the form itself, and data cleanup, and what's that word that I always forget? Basically, when you create two contacts that are the same and they don't need deduplication,
The duplication, yeah.
like that's all happening in the background too. So yeah.
Mops are pros at cleaning up messes, says Charles.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I need a mops expert to come clean up my RevOps mess then.
Yeah, so here's an opportunity for collaboration as well as automation within our
Yeah.
community. But David, thank you so so much for giving us your time and bringing your value into our live stream today, and more importantly as well into our community every day. So thank you so much for that.
Yes.
I
And
hope you
thank
had
you for
some
having me.
fun.
Oh, I did.
No, absolutely. Now go and open up that door so that you can have some time with your dog that's so eager to to say hi.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much again. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in the community.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. And to everyone else here watching as well, I'll see you guys in the fantastic world of the internet, or the community is free. Bye, everyone.